How many people wishing I spent more time talking about sin? Right? It's everybody's favorite subject. If only we could hear more about sin, right? If that is true, you are in luck today. Because today, we're going to talk about sin. And hopefully, by the end of today, you'll understand why. As many of you know, there are several passages. A lot of times I'm up here, I'm reading Scripture, and I say, this passage bothers me. There's a lot of passages that bother me. Okay, so today we're going to read two stories out of John. Once again, we'll probably just be in John. Just from now on, when you come to church, just bring John. Chances are we're just going to use John for the rest of the time. But we're going to be in two stories in John. The first story is in John 5, the healing at Bethesda. Once again, these are stories you guys should be familiar with. I've gone over them several times. The other story is going to be in John 8, the adulterous woman. And if I say idolatrous woman, I meant adulteress. She didn't commit idolatry. She committed adultery. For some reason all week I've been getting those mixed up. So if I say idolatry, I mean adultery. Okay, I've been getting mixed up on that all week. So the first story is Jesus and healing at the pool of Bethesda, John chapter 5, starting at verse 1. After these things, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, which is called in Hebrew Bethesda, having 5 porticos. In these lay a multitude of those who were sick, blind, lame, and withered, waiting for the moving of the waters. For an angel of the Lord went down at certain seasons into the pool and stirred up the water. Whoever then, first, after the stirring up of the water, stepped in was made well from whatever disease with which he was afflicted. A man was there who had been ill for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been a long time in that condition, he said to him, "Do you wish to get well?" The sick man answered, "Sir, I have no man to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. But while I am coming, another steps down before me." Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your pallet, and walk." Immediately the man became well, picked up his pallet, and began to walk. Now it was the Sabbath on that day, so the Jews were saying to the man who was cured, "It is the Sabbath. It is not permissible for you to carry your pallet." But he answered them, "He who made me well was the one who said to me, 'Pick up your pallet and walk.'" They asked him, "Who is the man who said to you, 'Pick up your pallet and walk'?" But the man who was healed did not know who it was, because Jesus had slipped away while there was a crowd in that place. Now afterward, Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, "Behold, you have become well. Do not sin anymore, so nothing worse happens to you." Next story is in John 8, starting at verse 1. But Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. Early in the morning, he came up again into the temple, and all the people were coming to him, and he sat down and began to teach them. Now the scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman caught in adultery, and having set her in the center of the court, they said to him, "Teacher, this woman has been caught in adultery, in the very act. Now in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such a woman. What then do you say?" Now they were saying these things, testing him, so that they might have grounds for accusing him. But Jesus stooped down and with his finger wrote on the ground. But when they persisted in asking him, he straightened up and said to them, "He who is without sin among you, let him be the first to throw a stone at her." And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. When they heard it, they began to go out one by one, beginning with the older ones. And he was left all alone. And the woman where she was in the center of the court. Straightening up, Jesus said to her, "Woman, where are they? Did no one condemn you? Did no one condemn you?" She said, "No, Lord." And Jesus said to her, "I do not condemn you either. Go, from now on, sin no more." So here we have a story of a man who, as far as we know, due to nothing of his own, he's sick and in need of healing. And then we have a woman who has made some mistakes. She's committed adultery. She got caught in the act of adultery. Okay, we have two people on different sides of the spectrum. And what does Jesus tell both of them? Go and sin no more. Now that bothers me. It bothers me for many reasons. Because for one, all of my Christian life, I have been told that I am nothing but a sinner. I will always fall short to the glory of God. I'm completely and totally depraved. Nothing I can ever do will ever be good enough for God. I will always be a lowly sinner. Always be a beggar trying to help another beggar learn where to get bread. No matter what happens in my life, I will always sin. Now, if that's true, why does Jesus say, go and sin no more? Why would Jesus tell us to do something that is impossible to do? Why would he give a command that he knows we couldn't follow? Doesn't make sense to me. So, please understand, there is a doctrine out there called sinless perfection. And what sinless perfection means is sinless perfection believes, or people who hold to that believe that you can go through your life without ever sinning, and you can be perfect. You can live a life of sinless perfection, right? That's heresy, okay? I'm not promoting that. I'm not saying that we could all live sinless lives and go to heaven on our own merits, because that's what that's all about. Again, so that's what you're hearing me say. Because once again, please understand, I know you always don't always hear what I say. You hear what you hear me say, which might not be what I actually say. If you're hearing me say, we can be sinlessly perfect, I'm not saying that. Okay? But because the premise of sinless perfectionism is based on the fact that sins are our acts, because we've been told for so long that our acts are our sins, right? Stealing is sin. Adultery is sin. Idolatry is sin. Murder is sin. Our actions are our sin. Sin is the verb. Sin is our actions verb, right? Verb is action words. And I've been saying for several years now that sin is not our actions. Our actions are the result of sin. Sin is the thing that is present inside of us that is driving our actions. Why do I believe that? Because that's what Jesus says. So again, the scriptures. Jesus says, about talking about sin, or talking about murder. He says, not murder is the issue. It's the anger that burns in your heart that gets you to murder. It's the thing inside of you that causes you to commit murder. It's not the adultery. Adultery is not a sin. It's the lust that is burning inside of you that gets you to commit adultery is what's the sin. The sin is not our actions. We don't need to be worried about our actions. We need to be worried about what is that thing inside of us that's driving our actions. And so when Jesus says, go and sin no more, he's not talking about our actions. He's talking about our way of thinking. He's saying, go and change the way you think. Go and think differently. Because I will tell you from my experience, once again, I can only share with you my experience, and I know I can't convince you of anything based upon my experiences. I hope you can find it in your own experiences. All of my sinfulness came from a misunderstanding of who God is. I didn't understand who God was. And because I didn't understand God, I thought things I shouldn't have thought. I did things I shouldn't have done. I believed things that were not true. And so when we look at the story of the Bible is a collection of stories about people who didn't understand who God was. The entire Old Testament, the entire history of the nation of Israel is about a people who did not understand their God. They constantly thought their God was out to get them. They constantly thought that their God was against them. They constantly thought that their God was separated from them. Because once again, please, we talk about this all the time in church. We're separated from God. You got to come to Christ, or if you don't come to Christ, you'll be eternally separated from God. But yet the Bible says there's nothing that can separate us from God. And the Bible tells story after story after story about how we were never separated from God. Adam and Eve were in the garden. They sinned while in the garden. Once again, please understand, why they sin? Because they changed what they believed to be true about God. They sinned before they ever touched the fruit. Their sin is what got them to eat of the fruit. They changed what they believed to be true about God. And what did God do? He came and found them. And where did he find them? He found them hiding themselves. Why are you hiding yourselves? Because we're naked. Who told you you were naked? So once again, Adam and Eve's sin is what separated us from God, but yet God went and found them. But yet he separated. After Adam and Eve get kicked out of the garden, where's God? God is right there with them. There's no separation. Cain kills Abel. God puts his mark on Cain so that way everybody who knows not to hurt him. God stayed with Cain. He never separated himself from Cain. When things on earth got so bad that you were not going to be able to live out the plan and purpose which God had predestined for you before the foundation of the world, he made the decision that broke his heart. We can read about in Genesis how it broke his heart that he had to eliminate the entire world. Because he needed you to have the opportunity to be born and to live out the plan and purpose for your life. And so he had a flood. But where was he? He was there. He was with Noah. He was with his family. He was with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He was with the nation of Israel when they were enslaved in Egypt. He was with them in the desert as they were wandering around the desert trying to find the promised land. He was with them after they found the promised land. He was with us physically in person through the incarnation of Jesus Christ. So please tell me again how, once again, we're separated from God. It's all based upon a misunderstanding. It's all based upon a lie about the lie that we're separated. We could be separated, even though the scriptures tell us there is no separation. It's all based upon a misunderstanding. But lucky for us, God himself became flesh. And he dwelt among us to make God known, to clear up the misunderstandings we had about him, to explain to us who God was. How do I know this? Because the scriptures tell me so. We're not leaving John, because why would we? John chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and apart from him nothing came into being that has come into being. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. God's light, the light of Christ, shined into the darkness of humanity, and humanity did not understand it. So then what happened? Verse 14, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we saw his glory. Glory as of the only begotten from the Father, full of grace and truth. John testified about him and cried out, saying, this was he of whom I said, he who comes after me has a higher rank than I, for he existed before me. For of his fullness we have all received. We have all received, and grace upon grace. For the law was given through Moses. Grace and truth were realized through Jesus Christ. Notice how I said truth was not realized through the scriptures? It says truth was realized through Jesus Christ, the Word of God. No one has seen God at any time. The only begotten God who is in the bosom of the Father, he has explained him. Nobody has seen God at any time except for God himself, who existed as the Son who is in the bosom of the Father. And he explained him. A little bit of history. Jesus, anybody know what year Jesus was born historically? I'm not talking technically, there's some variance, but in theory, what year was Jesus born? 0. Right? 0. Time, as we know it now, started with the birth of Christ. Everything is measured before Christ and after Christ, right? BC, before Christ, AD, omno dominion in the year of the Lord, right? Even before the Common Era and after the Common Era are still marked by the birth of Christ. Anyway, so then Jesus gets crucified around 30 to 33. Okay, Jesus is alive for about 33 years, so somewhere between 30 and 33 is when Jesus is crucified. Most of the Gospels are written fairly close to there. Right? They're not written right after. Some of them are in the 40s and the 50s. John's Gospel is written in between 85 and 90 AD. So over 50 years after Jesus' life, John is writing his Gospel. And this is one of the reasons why John's Gospel is very different. We have what's called the Synoptic Gospels, which are Matthew, Mark, and Luke. John is not a Synoptic Gospel, because the Synoptic means the same. Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they're all the same. They believe that they were all written using the same sources and all that kind of historical criticism that I don't get bogged down in. But they had a lot of the same stories and the same things happen, and it's just come from a different perspective. John's gospel is very different. John is an old man. A lot of time has now passed between the death of Jesus and when he's writing. He's looking down upon this time from a very different lens. He's already seen some things that have happened in the world and the way the world has gone, and he's trying to write to that situation. And so he's writing his prologue, the first 18 verses of the gospel. He's writing kind of explaining what happened, then he spends the rest of it kind of explaining how and why and all that kind of stuff. So when he says, no one has seen God at any time, this is many years after Moses was face to face with God on the mountain. Everybody remember that story? He came down off the mountain, his face shone so bright that they had to put a veil over it because he had encountered God face to face. So, either A, John is wrong and somebody has seen God's face, or he was not familiar, he just didn't know about that. Or he might have been an old man, might have been senile and just forgot that Moses had seen God. Or maybe. So we have option A, John's wrong. Option B, John didn't know it happened. Option C, he had dementia and forgot. Or option D, maybe he's not talking about physically seeing. Maybe he's saying no one has known, or nobody has seen God for who he really is. Nobody has understood God at any time except for he who is in his bosom, and he has explained him. Because once again, please, Jesus' task on earth was to show us who God was. That is it. Why did Jesus come into the world? To demonstrate to us who God is. That was his sole purpose for being here. And you say, well, Jimmy, his whole purpose was to die for my sins. Okay? His death on the cross, his murdering of him on the cross was another example of him demonstrating to us who he is. Because, please understand, we murder Jesus. Jesus turns himself over to us. We find him guilty when there's no guilt to be found in him. We nail him to the cross. We bury him in a tomb. And 3 days later, he comes back and says, guess what? I'm still not separated from you. I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere. You can't kill me. The cross is the ultimate demonstration to us of who God is. So everything that Jesus did in his life was to explain to us who the Father was. John 17. Jesus spoke these things, and lifting up his eyes to heaven, he said, Father, the hour has come. Glorify your Son, that the Son may glorify you, even as you gave him authority over all flesh, that to all whom you have given him, he may give eternal life. This is eternal life, that they may know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ whom you have sent. I glorified you on earth, having accomplished the work which you have given me to do. John 17, we talked about this several times. Jesus is saying, I came to bring eternal life, which is for people to know who you really are. And I have made you known. At this point in time, Jesus had not been betrayed. Jesus had not been beaten, mocked, spit on him. He had not been nailed to a cross. He had not died. He had not been buried. He had not been resurrected. But yet he says, I have accomplished, past tense, all the works which you have sent me to do. He has made God known to us. But yet, 2,000 years after all these events, we still don't know who God is. Jesus stands up in John 5, and we've gone over those scriptures time and time and time again, and he says, you've never seen God at any time, you've never heard his voice, you don't have his word abiding in you. You search the scriptures because you think that in them you have eternal life, but it is these that testify of me. And that statement in John 5 is just as true to the religious leaders today as it was to the religious leaders then. Because today we still are not understanding who God is. And that is very apparent when we look at some of the things that we're protesting, some of the things we're talking about, some of the things that we're promoting. Jesus Christ came to eliminate our idea of separation. The epitome of tearing down walls and eliminating borders. Jesus says there is no longer division between male and female. There is no longer division between slave and free. There is no longer a division between Jew and Gentile. There is no longer division between black and white. There are no longer divisions between us. There is no separation in any of us. We are all but one in Christ Jesus our Lord. And so when we look at churches continuing to separate, we're looking at political leaders continuing to separate, whether it's by trying to build physical walls or just building fences between us and ideology. We're separated by what we believe. If you believe this, you're one of these. If you believe this, you're one of these. How about we're just all people in the same group that believe differently and think differently, but we're all one. One of my favorite, there's this guy, I forget his name now, but his website's thenakedpastor.com, and he's a cartoonist. And some of you guys, I've shared some of his cartoons, and one of the ones I saw recently was him. The cartoon was Jesus talking to the Pharisees, and he says, the difference between you and I is I use love to define the scriptures. You use the scriptures to define love. He's the one who had the one where the guy walks into church with his arm around the question mark, and the pastor walks up to him and says, you're welcome here, but your friend is not. Another one is there's a picture where all these people have pencils and they're all drawing borders, and Jesus is going through with an eraser trying to erase them all. There is no separation in God. There's no separation between us and God, and there's no separation between us, no matter where we live. No matter what we believe, no matter what we think, no matter how we see the world, no matter what we believe politically or spiritually or socially, there's no separation between us. We're all human beings living in one planet that all have a different way of seeing that planet because we all have different cultures and different experiences. The objective is not for us to be right. The objective is for us to live together in harmony in the midst of our differences. And so how do I know that 2,000 years after Jesus came to explain him, we are still not getting him? Because we as human beings continue to build separations. We continue to build walls. We continue to divide and separate people based upon race and gender and status and finances and whatever. That's not the message of Jesus. And so once again, do we want to say we're following Christ? Or do we want to follow Christ? Do we want to talk about being biblical Christians? Or do we actually want to listen to what the Bible has to say? Because please, we spend so much of our time going into the scriptures, trying to define who God is, never realizing that Jesus is the definition of who God is. Jesus says through that cartoon, I use love to define the Scriptures. You use the Scriptures to define love. We use the Scriptures to define God. We need to be using Jesus to define God. Because he is, as the author of Hebrews says, the exact representation of God's nature. As Jesus says, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. As Paul says, he is the face of the invisible, the perfect image of the invisible God. So again, I'm not making this stuff up. If we see Jesus, we see God. Jesus is the definition of who God is. Jesus came to tell us to go and sin no more. And if we are able to begin to see through the eyes of Jesus Christ, we will no longer misunderstand who God is. Problem is, I can't do that for you. Problem is, I can't change the way you see. As I mentioned last week, I have come to the realization that I cannot change your mind about anything. 2015, coming into 2016, I spent so much of my time trying to convince all of you not to support Donald Trump. How many of you were convinced by me not to support Donald Trump? And I tried really hard. I tried really hard to convince you not to support him. If I can't convince you of that, I can't convince you of anything. I've given up trying to convince you that I'm right and you're wrong. You want to support him? Support him. I don't care. It has nothing to do with me. I just don't see it that way. You can see it that way. I still love you and we're still fine. What I realized this last week, I've talked a lot about being a spiritual midwife. My job as a pastor is to come alongside of you and help you through your experiences, through your way of seeing the world, recognize and understand Christ in you. I want to come alongside of you and help you give birth to what was implanted in you before the foundation of the world, which is Christ in you, the hope of glory. The problem I recognize is that so many of us pastors, we're not spiritual midwives, we're spiritual sperm donors. I'm going to take what's in me, the very seed that's in me, and I'm going to try to put it in you to impregnate you with what I believe to be true. I'm going to try to impregnate you based upon my experiences, based upon the way I see the world. And that's what we do as pastors. And we wonder why the church is in the condition it's in. Because I'm right, you're wrong, and you need to believe me or you're no longer welcome here. And I can share testimony after testimony after testimony of people who were kicked out of churches because they didn't agree with the pastor. May it never be so here. I want you to disagree with me. I love the fact that we don't agree on everything, because it shows that even inside of our diversity of thought, we still have unity. We can still be one, even if we don't agree. So my objective is not to, A, convince you that I'm right about anything. My objective is to be able to come alongside of you and help you see Christ in you. I want you to be able to see and fall in love with you for God's sake. I want you to love you in the exact same way in which God loves you. And if there's anything I can do to help you find out how God loves you, because once again, my story is my story. It's not going to be your story. But what is your story that God is using to demonstrate to you how he loves you? What is the story that God has in your life that is showing you how you are to be loving other people? The story exists. Mine was through my wife and then my children. Yours might be different. But the story is there. I can almost guarantee it. Because the beauty when we can tap into that, when you begin to find that in you, that very presence of Christ in you that is there, I can promise you, if you ever ask him, Christ, are you in me? He says, I am. When you tap into that, you begin to see with his eyes. You begin to hear with his ears. You begin to talk with his mouth. Your actions become his actions. You become one with Christ. And this cannot happen if you don't see yourself the exact same way he sees you. The problem is that so many of us spend so much of our time putting our issues onto God. And our God becomes the father of our issues. If I'm filled with shame and I'm consumed by shame, God becomes the source of my shame. If I'm filled with anger and consumed by anger, God becomes very angry and punishing. If I feel guilt and regret all the time, God becomes the judge that has judged me guilty, has judged me unworthy. We make God in our image. God is supposed to be making us in his image. And we need to be allowing God to form us in his image, because when God sees us, he does not see in us what we see in us. I look in the mirror. About a month ago, I grew my hair. I didn't cut my hair for about 2 months. I do it like a bald check. I do it every once in a while, just to see how bald I really am, and it's pretty bad. I mean, it's coming up. I mean, it's like the top and the back are like meeting. Like the back hair isn't growing anymore. Up here's not growing. It's just like I'm just gonna have like a band. Ryan and Jeff know what I'm talking about. Dave's getting there. I don't know how he's so far ahead of me. He's very much older than me. But when I look in the mirror, or when God looks at me, God doesn't see balding. God doesn't see overweight. God doesn't see somebody who's battled with drugs and alcohol. God doesn't see me as all the things in which I see myself as. God sees me as the perfect image of which he created me. He spends all of his time trying to get me to see myself in that same way. He spends all of his time, as St. Bernard says, he spends all of his time trying to get me to love myself for his sake. Because when I can begin to love me the way he loves me, it becomes impossible for me not to love you the way he loves you. And if I can begin to love you the way he loves you, and you love me the way he loves you, tell me how we don't change the world. Tell me how we don't keep misunderstanding, how we don't misunderstand God. I don't remember. We know what I'm trying to say. Jesus says, go and sin no more. My belief is that he is saying is go and misunderstand me no more. Stop seeing yourself as a cripple lying by a pool. Get up, walk out, and sin no more. Stop seeing yourself as a woman who deserves to be stoned, and go and sin no more. Stop seeing yourself as a person who is told you were never good enough, and go and sin no more. Stop seeing yourself as a victim, and go and sin no more. You are not who the world has told you you are. Do I have to go over the chickens again? Stop listening to the chickens. You are good enough just the way I made you. And I've given you everything you need to be the person I created you to be. I eliminated all of humanity one time so you can be born. I allowed you to murder me and nail me to a cross just so I can come back 3 days later so you can live out the plan of purpose, to show you, to prove to you who I am. And then no matter where you go, no matter what you do, no matter what you think, no matter what you think about me, I will never change my mind about you. So let's go and sin no more. Let's begin to do the work and take the journey into our own being to see ourselves in the image of God and stop crafting God in our image. I cannot convince any of you that any of this is true. All I can do is show you evidence of the journey that I'm going on. And I'm still not there. Once again, this message is for me. Not necessarily for now. Earlier when I was telling you about how we need to eliminate sermons, that was me telling you that I'm right. This is me talking to me. This is me trying to help myself stay on that journey. Because how many times when you see someone, is there a negative thought pops in your mind? something negative. Oh, that's not going to work, or they're a failure, or they're too fat, or they don't know what they're talking about, or they're this, or they're that. And for so many of us, that's the first thought that pops in our mind when we encounter somebody. That's the reaffirmment in our own lives that we're not seeing them through the lens of Christ. I'm not seeing myself through the lens of Christ. Because once I see myself through that lens, it's impossible for me not to see you through that lens. So let's take that journey. Because, if you don't, I'm sorry, but this is all we're talking about this year. All we're talking about this year is finding that love in you. Finding that love for you. And anything I can do to help you in that journey. You know my phone number. You know where my office is at. Most of you know where I live. Don't just show up, though. Give us a call so we can clean first. It's a warning. It's a warning. Things get a little crazy at the Thornton household. But I want to take that journey with you. I want you to take that journey with me. I want us to go and sin no more. And once again, I'm not saying it's possible. I'm not saying we can always be perfect, but we can try. We can go on a journey. And we can say, you know what? I'm not going to misunderstand God anymore. I want to know who He is. I'm going to start defining God by how I define Jesus. Because I said this before. If what you think about God is different than what you think about Jesus, what you think about one of them is wrong. There is no difference between God and Jesus. He's the exact representation of His nature. If you've seen Him, you've seen the Father. He is the face of the invisible. He's the perfect image of God.